Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first in the Taking Care of Yourself and Your Loved Ones webinar series. It goes without saying that this past year has been extremely difficult for everyone. COVID-19 and all the stresses associated with it have really taken a toll on our mental health. Nationally, we're seeing higher rates of isolation, stress, burnout, anxiety, depression, alcohol consumption, substance use greater than before the pandemic. And locally, we know that our people in our community and members of the Duke family are also struggling. Referrals to Duke Psychiatry have increased significantly, and results from Duke Health's recent Checking In With You survey confirmed that many of our team members are experiencing higher levels of burnout. This is especially true for our providers taking care of COVID patients, as well as all of our frontline providers. I want to assure you that Duke is committed to supporting your well-being, the faculty, the staff, the trainees, and students. And this series of 6 webinars is designed just to do that. Throughout the series, faculty members from the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences will provide practical mental health guidance for you and your loved ones on emotional wellness, substance misuse, suicide prevention, and mental health in children and adolescents of color. I invite you to join us for as many webinars as you like and to submit your questions ahead of time to help the presenters meet your needs as best as possible. You'll find that information linked in the chat. I'd like to thank Moira Wren and the members of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences for taking time to share their expertise and offer this important resource to our Duke family. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. Wren, Chair of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, who will introduce today's speakers.
Thank you, Dean Klopman. I'm Moira Wren, Chair of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. I'm excited to be hosting some of our mental health series. To be mindful of time, I'd like to jump right in and introduce today's speaker. Dr. Robin Gurwitch, a psychologist and professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, specializes in work with children considered at risk. She's a recognized expert on the impact of mass violence and disasters on children and families, providing direct service and consultation to federal and other agencies nationally and internationally. Dr. Gurwitch has been a member of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network since it began in 2001 and is a senior advisor for the Terrorism and Disaster Program of the National Center for Child Traumatic Stress. She recently completed her work with the National Advisory Committee on Children in Disasters. Dr. Gurwitch has been a leading voice on the mental health impact of COVID-19 on families and support personnel, serving as a subject matter expert for the American Psychological Association. During this process, if to ask a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will hold all questions until the end of Dr. Gurwich's presentation, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can in the allotted time. Thank you very much, Dr. Gurwitch, for being here today, and I will turn it over to you now.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here to kick off this amazing series that y'all have put together. I am going to jump right in, and as we do, let me jump in and share my screen, and hopefully everything goes like it's supposed to go. There we go. So as we get started, if you take just a second, I know you've had lots of presentations or you've looked up things about this is the impact that COVID is having, this is what it looks like, this is how you can tell that you may be experiencing some extra stress, like somebody needed to tell us that, right? But what I hope to do today in the time that we have is give you some ideas of what we can do about that. But to start us off, what I'd like to do is to have you think about, reflect upon a couple of things in this last strange year that you will be walking forward from saying, okay, this is one thing I'm grateful for. So if you could put in the Q&A, just if you're willing, just a couple things one thing that you may have been grateful for, even though this last year has been so bizarre. And I'm going to jump in and talk about a new framework for thinking about our own wellness. Do want to acknowledge that the Pause, Refresh, and Nourish, or PRN, is a product from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and many of these slides were developed in collaboration with colleagues from the Center the Center for Child and Family Health. So I think about Harry Potter. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I read him from the beginning with my daughter. And I started thinking COVID is like a dementor, because dementors are defined as something that feeds on human happiness and generates feelings of depression and despair in any person in close proximity to them. I think all of us have felt the dementor's breath from the stressors of COVID-19, our work stress and family stress, and certainly grief and loss that is tremendous, affecting us in our workplace, affecting us in our families. So we know that these dementors live and breathe among us. So we need to find a way that we can respond. We also know that there is continued uncertainty. The vaccine has helped, but there's still much uncertainty out there. With that uncertainty, coupled with racism and the social justice movement and the political climate that we live in, we continue to have that stress and family stress. I was telling someone the other day that I think about this as we've always had lots of balls to juggle, right? You've always worked to balance. You've always been juggling balls as best as we can. But now we're juggling our same balls and people are throwing in live chainsaws, and now we've got to juggle those too, and it becomes harder. So sticking with Harry Potter, we need to think about what are our protections. And I think one of the things to remember is awareness is part of that. And awareness simply means that we recognize that we also can be impacted by the stress of all that's happening around us, not just that it's happening to our clients or our patients or our family members or neighbors, but it can happen to us as well. And really thinking through, and we'll talk a little bit in a second, how do we balance our work and life and connections? If you take nothing else from this, please take away that connections with others, no matter how we create them, no matter how we continue to use them, are one of our best protections. Connections with our colleagues, with our family members, with our friends, our relatives become so important. And all three of these are important to our own self-care. So this new framework, or PRN, I thought I'd like the initials. It seems apropos. When I think about my happy place, I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Alabama. Although right now it's so bizarre. I saw, frozen tundra all around there. But that's where I think about, okay, this is where I'm going to think about and draw some peace from. Each of us probably has that one spot. But if we go through the pause to think through checking in with yourself, excuse me, and by that I mean take a true look. Think about, where do we hold our tightness? Where do we hold the negative emotions that we may be experiencing? Is it in our shoulders, our neck, our head, our arms and legs? Where is it? And sometimes there are days that I think, okay, it starts at the top of my head and it ends at the bottom of my toes. So we all have that, but we need to sometimes do that little body scan. Think about not only where's the stressors, but what are the emotions that go along with those stressors? Because taking that time to just check in with ourselves gets us to the next piece of the PRN framework, which is the reset. To truly acknowledge the feeling of being somewhat uncentered. Imagine a leaf floating down a stream that we can put some of this on as it goes. As we reset, there are a few things we can do. And I recognize that if I say, oh, you need to take a long walk, well, I've got 2 minutes before I'm due back somewhere else or before the next Zoom meeting starts. So we need to think about things we can do quickly Sometimes things we can do that no one even knows we're doing. And then sometimes that we can actively take some time, truly carve it out. So it could be anything from doing some mindfulness or meditation, petting our animals. I don't think dogs have ever been walked so much in their lives, but petting animals actually does calm us, reduces blood pressure. Looking at a favorite photo of you and your children or your spouse or a partner, friends, family members, loved ones, a place that you enjoyed, that can help reset some of that stress. And to think about some focus on a positive, some relaxation breathing, an affirmation, and each of us may have our own affirmation. Sharing those gratitudes like you're doing in the Q&A, the time with coworkers, time with family, all of those. Humor is great for helping us reset. So whether it's watching, I cannot tell you how many times I've rewatched the entire series of Schitt's Creek during this last year, or finding something else that makes you laugh, a funny video or meme, talking with a colleague. And then think about, what would you say to someone else if they came to you and said, hey, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm doing. What would you say to them? And think about that. I know you're going to cuss me when this is over, because now I'm going to have you ruminating on Let It Go song in your head. But when we think about rumination, because that happens, we go through what we're thinking about, and it runs through our head what we're worried about, what we're concerned about, what we need to do next, what we think we haven't done, or what we've done and maybe we didn't do as well as we should have. All those ruminating thoughts. So first we have to name it. Okay, I'm doing it again. That's spinning through my head. And then, yes, channel Elsa and let it go. Find a time where you truly can involve yourself in about a 15 or 20-minute focused activity. So if you find that, build it into your day that you are going to find some time, whether it's during lunch, to just let it go. Whether it's the end of the day, it may be at the beginning of the day, so you start fresh. And finally, we think about nourishing. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves, what do I need to nourish myself right now? What is that? Taking care of ourselves is not selfish. Self-care actually means that we can do a better job as we reach out to others. So taking care of ourselves, if we practice helping others, but we don't take care of ourselves, then our compassion is incomplete. So we want to think about ways to replenish our mind and body, our hearts and souls, our spirits. So think about during the day, or particularly at the end of the day, what is one meaningful moment that you may have had at home or at work? Just one, and bring that up. Find a moment for you to be playful or lighthearted or joyful. Listening to a new baby laughing, or doing something silly with someone else. How do we become a little bit lighthearted, letting that go just a bit? Create your own affirmation or mantra. I've got this, or, I did as good as I could do today. I'm going to start again tomorrow, whatever it is. Believe me, I think every weight loss program known to man says, have a mantra that you can be kind to yourself. But self-care requires that as well. Why are we doing what we're doing? As it's been said, burnout is really high. Not just compassion fatigue or emotional strain, but true burnout, where I think, do I really want to stay in this job? But sometimes connecting with what brought us to this in the first place, coupled with thinking about one meaningful moment that you may have had today. Celebrate the small victories, the little things. They don't have to be huge. What's one small thing that you did today? What's one thing that maybe you provided to someone else? If you have had someone that's had a loss, or if you've had a loss, finding a way, a creative way to commemorate that person. We know that one of the best ways to practice self-care is actually to do something for someone else. Even if they're hurting and we're having the same hurt, doing something for someone else can make a huge difference. I bake a lot when I get stressed. So in the last year, you can imagine how much I've been baking. And so sometimes what I have tried to do is think about who might benefit from baked goods rather than me just sitting down and eating dozens and dozens and dozens of whatever I've created. So I've gotten to know my neighbors. I've gotten to know some of my coworkers a little better. So what's one thing? It may be pulling up a trash can for an elderly neighbor. It may be bringing in some herbal tea to share with coworkers so we're not always going to the caffeine. And think about self-care plans. Every one of us is going to have something different. If I tell you, you know what you really need to do is run. If someone said that to me, okay, I've got a knee replacement, I'm working on a second, and I've got a fallen arch. So running's not on my self-care plan. But what is on my self-care plan? And what's on my self-care plan may actually be very different than what's on yours. But what are a few things that you can come to? When we think about pandemic essentials, they boil down to, are we sleeping enough? Are we getting that sleep? That may be a time where you practice mindfulness or relaxation or a let it go script of what are you putting on that leaf. And yes, I know you're thinking, oh, that sounds so lame. I can't think about it. I put those thoughts on the leaves and let them go too. Because there's not a right or wrong way to do that. Think about healthy eating, 5 fruits and vegetables, 30 minutes of some type of exercise. As much as we go to that caffeine, think about reducing that, monitoring that. Finding good herbal tea. I guess people over Christmas realize that I'm trying to make that change in my life. I have enough herbal teas to last me until the end of 2022, but I'm grateful for them because every day I mix and match. It's important also to limit your exposure to media and trauma stories. Too much actually makes it difficult. Definitely not before you're ready for sleep. Practice mindfulness. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes effort. And again, connections, connections, connections. How are you doing that? All of that being said, to practice self-care, keep calm. Think about sharing some ideas with coworkers as you practice them yourselves. So that being said, I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be at 4:20. I know that was fast and furious, and hopefully you grabbed a few nuggets that you can take home as you practice self-care, or 5 minutes in a break room. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me, and enjoy the rest of the series.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gurwitch, for this great tool as we search for ways to maintain our wellness and manage our stress. I would like to invite anyone that would like to place a question in the chat box, and please note that there's also a way to leave a question anonymously. And I'm just looking at the wonderful feedback and comments that we've received in the Q&A box of people sort of reflecting on their gratitude towards their job, their family members having more time, not driving, vaccine, new jobs. But, you know, I've also seen some comments about it's really challenging during this time when you're separated with family, from your family that may live in other parts of the country. And it can be, for some people, it's been a great length of time, you know, greater than 6 months. And we have one colleague that's put in here, it's been 15 months, which makes it very, very difficult. Do you have any thoughts about that, how to navigate that sense of chronic loss?
So I'm right there with you. I'm going on 15 months since I've seen my daughter, so I feel your pain. But are there other ways? And I know that FaceTime and phones are not the same as the touch. But what are some ways that you can think about maintaining that connection? Maybe with some of the new things, we can actually watch television together. So finding a show that you can both be on and watching that together. There's new apps for that. Can be really helpful. I think acknowledging that loss too, that grief. It's grief and loss are not just related to the empty chairs. They're also related to some of the things we aren't able to have. Just walking down the hall, my next door colleague, Ebony, in my office, I so miss just being able to jump in and have a quick chat. So are there other ways we can stay connected? And I would also think about the old-fashioned letter writing. There's something so amazing when you go to that mailbox and you have something to hold in your hand, or sharing a photo can be really helpful in that way as well.
Thank you. No, that's great. I guess the other thing is in looking at the recommendations you've provided, which are excellent, sort of step by step, the things that you can try and monitor and manage from your sleep, intake of caffeine, eating healthily, exercise. And I've learned with myself, I definitely have more difficulty sleeping at night if I'm doing that scrolling with my phone and looking all the news, some good, some not so good, but it's a hard habit to break, right? And even though I know all of this stuff and I'm in the field of mental health, right? I sometimes can't get myself to stop. It's hard to get yourself back to taking those steps. I don't know if you have any thoughts of encouragement or tell people don't give up. You may have some times where you're not doing as well, but get back to it.
So I think that's one thing. We're all going to have some good days and some not so good days. We can only do as much as we can do that day and then figure out the next day. But routine can be incredibly helpful. So it may be, at 10 o'clock, that's my limit. At 10 o'clock, the phone goes to vibrate. So I'm not getting the messages. I'm turning it dark so I'm not scrolling. That's my go-to. I may turn on some classical music because that may help me relax, or something, or read a book or watch something on television, not the news, something that you enjoy at the end of your day. So putting into your schedule, all right, 10 o'clock, I've got 5 more minutes if I want to scroll, and sticking to that. Just like anything else, the more we can build in a routine in a world that has thrown routine completely out the window can truly help. So, and definitely will help our sleep.
Yep. No, thank you. And I just want to comment again, is wonderful sharing that we have of our colleagues. Someone has shared that they're missing their mom who passed two years ago. So that is very difficult at any time in life when one loses a parent, but then to sort of add certainly the complexity of now of COVID-19 can really make that even more difficult. And then also, colleagues struggling with healthy eating and weight gain, trying to be able to manage these things in our lives. It's hard. It's expected to be hard at this time.
Yeah, so one of the things to think about, first, I'm very sorry for your loss and for all of you that are experiencing that. But to think about, are there ways to commemorate or honor the people that we've lost? Something special that you can do, something creative that you can do that is meaningful to you as you navigate that loss. Because every loss you experience in your work just brings back up our own losses. So I think that's part of it. And I just completely lost the other train of thought that you had said.
Well, it's also that we were just talking about just the habits you can get in if you're not able to.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I've done with some friends is trading healthy recipes, some really cool ones, because during this time we've had a little bit more time to cook. So my new go-to is like an eggplant parmesan with tofu ricotta. That is so much better than real ricotta cheese. But I've shared that widely. But I look forward to getting recipes from friends that say, hey, I tried this, or I used this instead. So that may be a way to do 2 things. 1, to help with healthy eating, but 2, to also stay connected with others, to share those recipes, can be really helpful. And give yourself permission that if you want that piece of chocolate, eat that piece of chocolate. But maybe say, okay, I'm going to have 2 pieces instead of the entire bag. So again, moderation is helpful, but find creative ways to blend those two.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. George. And I just want to acknowledge the wonderful sharing that's occurring on our Q&A, other people sharing other losses that they've had, some extensive losses in their circle of relationships, as well as a colleague, a recent relative who has died by suicide as well. So we know this is very hard losses, and we're very sorry, and please accept our condolences for this. But it's really important that we talk about these losses and that we support one another and find that space and place where you can do that. And we will be sharing on the website. We are going to have to shift to closing today's webinar. We will share when the webinar will be. This recording will be shared shortly. We have a website dedicated to the webinar. I'm hoping Susan Gallagher is putting that in the chat box. There was also, Dr. Garwood's request for recommendations for apps, meditation apps, other
Sure.
materials, so we can add that to the website if people can look to there. And we will also, I think, if we can take these comments, talking to the support team in terms of suggestions of things that people are doing to sort of help themselves during this time, might be something else we could share. I wish we could spend some more time talking with all of you and talking together, but unfortunately we are running out of time. And as I mentioned, we'll share the recording as well as more information on things that you've requested. I'd really like to thank Dr. Robin Gurwitch for her time and expertise, and thank you, the attendees, for your sharing and your honesty about what you're experiencing. We invite you to join us at the next event, which will be Wednesday, March 3rd at 4 p.m. And we'll focus on identifying and managing problematic alcohol and substance use during these times of stress. And our speaker will be Dr. Jennifer Plum Villadarga. Our series will include 6 webinars that will explore different aspects of mental health as we all seek tools and support during this time of social and cultural change and isolation. The same link may be used for the entire series, and all of the upcoming webinars may be found at the link that has been shared in the chat at the beginning. No one has been given a roadmap about how to navigate this difficult time. We encourage and invite you to seek support if you're struggling. Resources include our department's emotional support and well-being phone line are listed in the bottom of the webinar series webpage. Please take good care of yourself. Wishing you and your families good health and wellness. Thank you.